The LPGA tour had Caitlin Clark play, and the LPGA, like, fans, well, the event was taken over by the ominous crowd that made sure to go get angry at everything Caitlin Clark did and everything Caitlin Clark does and was ever going to do, and made it that she was the problem and not the solution.
The WNBA is exploding as a result of the LPGA's recent invitation to Caitlin Clark, one of the top young players in women's basketball, to participate in a special event. The result was an enormous crowd that was ecstatic and a new wave of fans who were interested in women's golf.
The LPGA, you can see when it came to them that they were happy that Caitlin Clark was there. They knew exactly the value that Caitlin Clark brought.
Although the golf community welcomed Clark, the WNBA's response to her popularity has been anything but cordial. Could this be jealousy or something more profound? Stay tuned because this story delves into the heart of a rivalry that is poised to transform women's sports. The LPGA publicly celebrated Clark's arrival, realizing the immense value she brings
to the whole event. They saw how important it was that new fans were getting involved in golf, especially women's golf.
The LPGA's decision to invite Caitlin Clark to their event was a game changer. Fans of all ages and backgrounds came not only to watch golf, but also to get a glimpse of Clark herself. Her popularity is undeniable, and the LPGA immediately welcomed her with open arms, realizing that she is more than just a celebrity and a beacon bringing new people to their sport. The LPGA celebrated her presence, realizing that Caitlin was more than just a basketball player and that she was a draw for young audiences, many of whom may not have previously thought about women's golf.
Because we know, in the WNBA, when it came to Caitlin Clark, it was a lot of like, we don't need you and we were good before and we don't like your fans and this, that, and
However, this cordial welcome sparked an unexpected outpouring of WNBA frustration about why, despite the potential boost she could provide, some WNBA voices seem to see her as a rival for attention rather than embracing her universal appeal. There is a perception within the league that she is diverting attention away from its established stars. Some WNBA players and even league supporters voiced doubt, claiming that the publicity surrounding Clark takes away from the advancements they have worked so hard to make. However, let's consider this. The WNBA's response, which contrasts so strongly with the LPGA, raises the question of whether they are protecting their stars or are they failing to see the wider picture. If women's sports are to flourish, wouldn't it make sense to welcome a talent like Caitlin who brings new followers along with her?
Like, they did everything they could to sabotage their own league. And yeah, it backfired. For me anyway, I think it's hard to argue that it didn't completely backfire for them because Caitlin Clark is more popular than ever.
The reaction of LPGA players and fans is what makes this situation even more intriguing. The energy at the event was electric, and the crowd felt as though they were there for something special rather than just a typical golf tournament. People arrived early to watch Clark play and lingered long after the event to interact with players and take in the excitement. This wasn't a one-time boost, but rather an indication of a growing interest that could elevate women's sports everywhere. LPGA players like Nelly Korda publicly praised Clark, calling her a breath of fresh air and recognizing how wonderful it was to see a new audience. They saw Caitlin as an ally who could bring energy and enthusiasm to the game rather than as a threat, and they didn't hesitate to take advantage of the opportunity. In contrast, the WNBA, which has regrettably been more defensive about Clark's popularity, has been more defensive about it, giving the impression that Caitlin represents a shift that threatens the league's traditional dynamics rather than concentrating on the potential for cross-promotion or how her fame could increase the league's visibility. Some WNBA players consider her fan following to be an infringement. However, this attitude might be impeding the league at a pivotal point. While the WNBA seems cautious and perhaps overly protective of its identity, by ignoring Clark's popularity, the WNBA is missing out on something that could benefit not only their league but the larger landscape of women's sports. Meanwhile, the WNBA's reluctance to embrace Clark fully reveals a very different approach. Rather than celebrating her ability to unite fans across sports, some in the league seem to view her popularity as a distraction. It's as if they're protecting an exclusive club rather than an inclusive platform for all women's sport fans. By excluding someone like Caitlin, the WNBA runs the risk of coming across as out of step with what the current sports audience desires. By attempting to keep their focus narrow, they may be missing the opportunity to develop a larger, more active fan base. This strategy stands in sharp contrast to the LPGA's open arms may hinder the WNBA's growth in the long run. Fans today are searching for dynamic stories, personalities, and connections between leagues. Caitlin Clark's genuine passion for all sports and her public support of female athletes in all sports, highlighting the value of unity and shared accomplishment, are what make her so famous. Clark has repeatedly stated her respect for leagues like the WNBA and her enthusiasm for promoting women's sports as a whole. Imagine if the WNBA had harnessed this passion instead of brushing it aside. Clark's influence could have brought new fans, increased ticket sales, and given the league a boost in visibility, but instead the league's response has been cautious, bordering on dismissive. This could be a major missed opportunity for the WNBA, one they might come to regret. Instead of welcoming Clark as an ally, they've unintentionally created tension that's now becoming public, which might alienate the very fans they're trying to attract. The difference in approach between the LPGA and WNBA is a clear lesson in adaptability. The LPGA saw Caitlin Clark's appearance as a moment to grow, bringing in fresh audiences and capitalizing on a unique opportunity. They understood that women's sports, traditionally lower in viewership, benefit greatly from cross-league support and unity. The LPGA isn't concerned about where the fans are coming from. They're thrilled that more people are interested in their sport, and by working alongside stars like Clark, they're setting themselves up to attract and retain those fans long-term. In contrast, the WNBA's stance seems to suggest that they view Clark's popularity as a threat rather than an asset. Instead of capitalizing on her cross-sport appeal, they seem focused on maintaining a status quo that may not serve them well in the evolving sports landscape. The LPGA's experience with Caitlin Clark should serve as a blueprint for other leagues on how to adapt to changing times. While the WNBA's protective stance may feel justified to those within the league, it risks alienating fans and stalling growth. If leagues like the WNBA don't embrace stars who can bring in new audiences, they may find themselves struggling to compete in an increasingly interconnected sports. Global supporters desire cooperation, vigor, and solidarity, particularly in women's sports, because the difficulties are shared by leagues. As Caitlin Clark's impact grows, the LPGA's success in accepting her demonstrates that openness and progress go hand in hand. If more leagues were willing to adopt this model, it may help all women's sports. The disparity between the WNBA's and the LPGA's approaches to her fame will probably grow more noticeable. In contrast to the WNBA's reluctance, the LPGA's embrace of Clark may spark a larger trend of cooperation across women's sports leagues, a strategy that might elevate all of them. May ultimately restrict its own reach by passing up the chance to collaborate with a star like Clark, potentially leaving valuable fans and resources on the table. This is about the future of women's sports as a cohesive force, not just about one player or league, and if the WNBA doesn't change, it might end up watching as other leagues profit from the star power they chose to overlook. An underlying divide between women's sports leagues has been revealed by the reaction to Caitlin Clark's rise in popularity. While the LPGA's strategy shows flexibility and vision, the WNBA's response suggests a more protective, almost defensive stance. This kind of friction is surprising, especially in an era where women's sports could greatly benefit from unity and shared promotion. With her sincere passion for women's sports, Caitlin Clark has demonstrated that she is not only a fan favorite but also a true advocate for all female athletes. It's not just about Caitlin's fanbase, it's about the wider impact she can have by encouraging young girls to participate in women's sports across the board. The WNBA could have embraced this moment, positioning themselves alongside Clark's story and using her influence to boost their league's visibility, but instead they have created an image of exclusivity that may ultimately backfire, leaving players and fans wondering why the league isn't more welcoming in today's sports world. Her magnetic personality and her ability to draw crowds represent an incredible asset not only to basketball but to every sport she touches. Imagine if the WNBA had taken a cue from the LPGA and publicly celebrated Clark's success. The LPGA recognized that Caitlin Clark is more than just an athlete. She is a personality that people can relate to, and that is what attracts people to her. The crowds that came to see her weren't just there for golf. They were there for the excitement, the story, and the opportunity to be a part of something new. This is where the LPGA showed true insight. They weren't focused on keeping things pure or exclusive to golf. Instead, they were focused on growing the sport, and they saw Clark as the ideal person to help them achieve that. The question now is why the WNBA hasn't adopted a similar mentality. Even more intriguing is the reaction of fans to the NBA's hesitation to accept Clark. By not fully supporting Clark, the WNBA runs the risk of alienating not only Clark's fans but also their own. The message this sends to young, aspiring athletes could be harmful rather than encouraging unity and celebrating each other's accomplishments. Many fans are outspoken about their support for Clark regardless of the sport she plays in. They want to see her succeed and are eager to follow her journey, whether it be on the basketball court or a golf course. The NBA's stance fosters division and implies that cooperation and cross-sport support are not possible. Conversely, the LPGA appears to recognize the importance of reciprocal promotion and community. Their strategy demonstrates a deeper comprehension of what modern sports fans desire. They want to see players who encourage one another, leagues that collaborate, and a sense of community. The LPGA's partnership with Caitlin Clark conveyed the message that they are actively seeking expansion and aren't scared of gaining new followers or the exposure that Clark brings. On the contrary, they embrace it. While the WNBA seems to be mired in a mindset that could impede its own development, this shift in strategy demonstrates a degree of adaptability that could be essential for the LPGA's future success.